What's up, YouTube? Back here with another video here on the channel. And this weekend was actually a pretty good weekend as far as book hauls go, because I had an opportunity to go to a used book sale at the local library here in town. And then I said, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead, because I also needed some home decor for the house. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna go to the Goodwill store and check out what they have as far as home decor. And I also know that they have a book section that I typically like to check out here, because sometimes people do, when they need to unhaul, they take some of their books to the Goodwill. So I knew that I was probably gonna stand a chance of finding some pretty good books that might be appealing to me. So I did a double haul, if you will, hitting the library first and then heading there across town to the Goodwill store to check out what they had in their inventory. And believe it or not, I actually came up with some pretty good deals for pretty good prices. So without further ado, I'm gonna jump right into some of the books that I was able to pick up from this double book haul on Saturday, a very productive Saturday morning for yours truly. Before I get started with the book haul, if you could, please hit the like button here on this video. And if you would be so inclined to subscribe to the channel for future content, please do that as well, as I would look forward to building a great social media community right here on YouTube, where we can talk about books and have a great exchange of ideas and thoughts about many different books of many different kinds. And so I'm looking to expand my interest in different types of books, and I'm hoping that you'll join me on this journey to a greater discovery and appreciation for many different genres of books. So without further ado, let's jump right into the book haul. First on the book haul is 52 Pickup. Now, this is an interesting book for a couple of different reasons. One is I have the movie on VHS. If you don't know what VHS is, you could probably look it up on the internet. But I do have the book on VHS, and I had a chance to find this book on my journey toward, actually this was one that I found in the Goodwill store, and it's actually set in Detroit, which is actually kind of cool for me because I am a native Detroiter. So, Detroit businessman Harry Mitchell was having a midlife crisis. He had an attractive wife at home. He had a voluptuous girlfriend on the side. I don't know if that's necessarily good to a lot of people, but maybe for the purpose of this story, it probably was. And now he had a problem with porn movies. Yeah. He was in one. A man with a stocking over his head and a 38 in his hand wanted $100 grand to keep Harry's pictures out of circulation. But the hoods behind the blackmail scam made a big mistake when they fingered Harry Mitchell for their pigeon. Because Harry was the type of guy who played every game by nobody's rules but his own. And the more they got him mad, the more certain it was that the only payoff Harry planned was getting even. So this is a really kind of an interesting story here, and you can see kind of an interesting little bit of cover art. This is a little bit of an older book, of course. You can see it's kind of an older paperback with kind of the page is kind of becoming a little bit discolored over time here. And again, I had this movie on VHS. I never actually watched the movie on VHS, but I did have it for a lot of years. I think my dad actually had the movie on VHS, and I just never had a chance to watch it. 1974, so that was a long time ago. So back to the mid to early 1970s. So anyway, this is one that I do plan to read, mainly because I do, again, like stories with a Detroit connection, and I think the plot's kind of interesting as well. Next up, I go to one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite authors, and that is, and actually before I even get to that, I saw the author and I picked up the book because I knew, number one, I know the author and I knew that I didn't have the book. So I felt like, hey, for $1, it was a no-brainer. And that is James Patterson, the legendary James Patterson. First to Die is one that actually, when I looked it up after I picked it up and I just automatically threw it into my basket, I thought, yeah, let's check it out and see what it's all about. And I was actually pretty pleased with what I found out. You're about to begin James Patterson's most exciting thriller yet. In San Francisco, newlyweds are being stalked and slaughtered. Enter 4 unforgettable women, all friends. Lindsay, a homicide inspector in the city's police department. Claire, a medical examiner. Jill, an assistant district attorney. And Cindy, a reporter who has just started working the crime desk of the San Francisco Chronicle. Joining forces, Pooling their talents, courage, and brains, they have one goal: to find, trap, and outwit the most diabolical and terrifying killer ever imagined. So I mean, this has got a lot of great elements. And I thought, you know what, again, James Patterson, I really haven't had a bad experience with James Patterson. I've probably read about 4 or 5 James Patterson books, and they've all been at least pretty solid. So, and usually even better than that. So I'm excited about this one. Pretty good cover art right there. It looks like probably the Golden Gate Bridge there in the background there, and kind of the glow of activity there. So really good cover art right there. And I thought, you know, again, James Patterson, I was like, you know, hey, you pretty much can't go wrong with James Patterson, at least I feel like. And so as I read it, I was like, yeah, there's no question about it. This is one that I'm adding. Can't beat the price, can't beat the author. Next up on the haul that I had is Retribution by Jillian Hoffman. So you can see right there, it's kind of a faded image right there of looks like a woman in distress on the cover, and then you can see the back cover right there with a little bio here on the author herself. So Retribution is when an elite prosecutor faces the most lethal predator she's ever encountered. It all comes down to a choice between justice and retribution. At the heart of Retribution is C.J. Townsend, a brilliant state prosecutor in Miami, well known for keeping her cool while trying even the most horrific cases. The latest suspect is as base as they come, a vicious killer who savors cruelty and considers murder an art. Amid a maelstrom of media attention, CJ has just begun to build her case when she is struck with a shattering personal blow connected to her past. Now everything will ride on her ability to hold herself together long enough to put the accused away forever. So it sounds like a really good story. It's kind of a one character driven story, but it does sound really interesting. The story was written by Jillian Hoffman, who was an assistant state attorney and a regional legal advisor for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, advising special agents on criminal and civil matters ranging from narcotics to organized crime. This is, or maybe was, her first novel. Don't know if she's ever written anything else since then, but it sounds very intriguing, and so I thought, you know what, this is one that I'm going to go ahead and grab because it just sounds like a really interesting story, and hopefully it will be if I get around to that at some point. Next up is The Long Far Away Gone by Lou Berney. And I thought this one sounded kind of interesting as well. This one kind of goes back and is set in the 1980s. So, in the summer of 1986, 2 tragedies rocked Oklahoma City. 6 movie theater employees were brutally killed in an armed robbery. Then, a teenage girl vanished from the annual state fair. Neither crime was ever solved. 25 years later, the reverberations of those unsolved cases continue to echo through the lives of those devastated by the crimes. Wyatt, the one teenage employee who inexplicably survived the movie theater massacre, is now a private investigator in Las Vegas. A case unexpectedly brings him back to a hometown and a past he's tried to escape, and drags him deeper into the harrowing mystery of the movie house robbery that left 6 of his friends dead. Like Wyatt, Juliana struggles with her past, specifically the day her beautiful older sister, Genevieve, disappeared at the fair. When Juliana discovers that one of the original suspects has resurfaced, she'll stop at nothing to find the answers. As Wyatt's case becomes more complicated and dangerous, and Juliana seeks answers from a ghost, their obsessive quest not only stir memories of youth and first love, but also begin to illuminate dark secrets of the past. Even if they find the truth, will it help them understand what happened and why they were left behind that long and far away gone summer? Will it set them free or ultimately destroy them? So again, I thought really cool story, sounded really good, and I'm really looking forward to maybe checking this one out. So sounds really interesting there, with a couple of different stories there that could be related, kind of coming and matching at one crossroad there, it seems. One of my favorite authors right there. I've read Jodie a number of times over the years, and I've always had a had an attraction to her stories. I've always found them interesting. Salem Falls was the first one that I ever read from her, and then My Sister's Keeper, I read that. And then The 10th Circle, I read that as well. She writes powerful stories that usually deal with moral crisis or decisions that people have to make that have far-reaching implications. And so they're usually really fascinating and really powerfully told. And this one right here, Small Great Things, is no different. This one is certainly an attention grabber right here. Ruth Jefferson, a labor and delivery nurse, begins a routine checkup on a newborn, only to be told a few minutes later that she has been reassigned to another patient. The parents are white supremacists and don't want Ruth, who is African American, to touch their child. The hospital complies, but the next day, the baby goes into cardiac distress while Ruth is alone in the nursery. Does she obey orders or does she intervene? Ruth hesitates before performing CPR and, as a result, is charged with a serious crime. Kennedy McQuarrie, a white public defender, takes her case, but Kennedy insists that mentioning race in the courtroom is not a winning strategy. Conflicted by Kennedy's counsel, Ruth tries to keep life as normal as possible, especially for her teenage son. And as the trial moves forward, Ruth and Kennedy come to see that what they've been taught their whole lives about others and themselves might be wrong. So this is, again, a powerful story. It deals with a serious issue that we continue to deal with, and in this case, it's racism, and it sounds like an incredible read, an incredibly important read, and I'm actually really excited about taking a shot at this one. It's a little under 500 pages, so there's a lot of body to this story, but it sounds really just like a fascinating read about a very important topic, again with the ethical, moral dilemma that has to be handled, that has to be considered in the midst of reading what probably, and what traditionally, if her past is any indication of this, that it will be also a story rich with important characters, consequential characters, interesting characters that are caught in very difficult, if not impossible, situations. Next up on the list is White Hot by Sandra Brown. And this is another one that I thought was interesting. Here you can see the back cover right there, and very pretty picture right there. And I thought, as I picked this one up, I thought, this could sound interesting. I've actually had some Sandra Brown books that I've had in my collection. I haven't had a chance to read them yet because I really probably just rediscovered reading probably a couple of years ago. And so I'm trying to, I guess, catch up on some books that I have in my collection while adding some new books to the collection as well. This one is really interesting. And I'll read a portion of the inside cover here. When she hears that her younger brother Danny has committed suicide, Sarah Lynch relents from her vow never to return to Destiny, the small Louisiana town in which she grew up. So it's kind of a story that we see a lot of times with people that have kind of hidden things that happened in their past, in their hometown, and they have a dilemma about whether to go back to that town and maybe face some of those demons from the past or to let those demons go. And so we're kind of seeing that dilemma play out here a little bit here early in this. So it goes on. She plans to leave immediately after the funeral, but instead soon finds herself drawn into the web cast by Huff Hoyle, her controlling and tyrannical father. The man who owns the town's sole industry, an iron foundry, and in effect runs the lives of everyone who lives there. So again, you see that dynamic thrown in there. As she feared, Sarah learns that nothing has changed. Her father and older brother, Chris, are as devious as ever, and now they have a new partner in crime, a canny and disarming lawyer named Beck Merchant, who appears to be their equal in corruption. So again, we see the roots of the past and how things have not changed, and now she's having to face some of these demons. And so, it goes on to talk about her having to kind of deal with the issues here and learning that Danny Hoyle's death was not suicide, but was in fact murder. So it kind of develops into a murder mystery, and with, again, some some tentacles that are kind of really grabbing at the story and making it really sound kind of fascinating and deeper than maybe just a typical murder mystery. So again, White Hot by Sandra Brown. Next up on this haul is The Missing by Chris Mooney. And this one, first of all, the cover art kind of catches my attention right there, right off the bat, as you can see almost like a kind of a crime scene thing going right there with the little blood droplets there on the cover of this particular book. And so it sounded really interesting to me. It's one of these stories that kind of deals with childhood issues and kind of coming to terms with that and then flashing forward to the present. And so again, I'll read the first couple of paragraphs of the inside flap. Darby McCormick has known Melanie Cruz and Stacey Stevens forever. Best friends since childhood, the threesome had survived high school together, but one night in the woods, drinking beers to celebrate Melanie's 16th birthday, the three unsuspecting teenagers witnessed the grisly murder of a woman. Darby and her friends fled the scene, but they left behind a clue to their whereabouts, which only simplified the killer's revenge. It didn't take long to find them. This time, only Darby survived. 25 years later, Darby is a crime scene investigator for the Boston Police Department. When a young woman is abducted from her home in the middle of the night, Darby finds an unexpected witness, a woman dressed in rags hiding behind the garage cans kept underneath the back porch of the victim's house. The woman is dangerously malnourished and is so distraught, so terrified, she believes she is still locked inside a dark prison cell, and that Darcy is one of her fellow prisoners. Darby's investigation reveals that the woman, Rachel Swanson, has been missing for more than 5 years. And there are others. As Darby tries to get Rachel to talk about the other missing women and the horrors she endured, the killer, known as the Traveler, is thought to be brought to light. As the race to find him heats up, Darby finds herself trying to unravel forensic clues about the case while attempting to uncover the existence of a killer who has eluded the police and FBI for more than 2 decades. A killer who, years ago, introduced Darby to violence and death. A killer who will use every means necessary to protect himself and to keep the missing women from ever being found. So this is a great story that, probably I'm guessing goes back and forth between the past and the present, and really kind of hopefully weaves together a pretty intriguing story. And so it sounds really interesting. The characters sound kind of interesting and rich, and so I'm kind of thinking that this is going to be one that I picked up again for relatively cheap, but I think I'm going to be willing to give this one a little bit of a try. Next up, 3 to go here. This is one that I had in the past, but I've never read it. But I have read a lot of books by Mike Lupica, a famous sports writer that was featured on ESPN quite a bit years ago with some of the sports talk shows, and is a pretty big name and has written a really large library of books. I actually have quite a number of Mike Lupica's books in my collection, and so this is one of them that I added. I brought this one here. You can see little bit of damage right there on the binding right there, a little bit of water damage, but it's still one that I thought was kind of interesting. So I'll just go ahead and read a little bit of the inside cover. As the go-to guy in Las Vegas, Jack Malloy thought he knew it all. But that was before he inherited half of the New York Hawks and found out that next to the Denzians of the country of football, he was just a babe in the woods. Over the course of a single season, Malloy will get a crash course in steroids, gambling, crooked quarterbacks, idiot sports writers, control freak coaches, and philandering announcers. He will become acquainted with such people as ATM, automatic touchdown maker Moore, veteran of 8 colleges and several police investigations, his bodyguard, Tire Iron Timmons, an ordained minister in the World Holy Unitarian Preachership. Whoop. It's clever. And Mo Jiggy, a rap star turned agent who travels with a larger posse than Wyatt Earp and uses it to very creative effects when negotiating. Malloy will end up with his brother and sister co-owners Ken and Barbie. the Devil Twins, out to get him, joined by his coach, the commissioner, and most of his fellow owners. He will find out just how far every mogul in America who doesn't have his own football team will go to get one, especially Alan Getz, the .com king, also known as Alan Gets What He Wants. And he just might wind up falling in love if he can only figure out which of the two smart, funny, tough women in his life, Annie or Liz, to fall in love with. The fact that Liz also happens to be his team president only makes it more complicated. How Malloy prevails, or doesn't, against the sea of adversity is something only a writer like Mike Lupica would dare to dream up. But if you ever wondered what you would do if you owned a football team, well, Lupica is your guy. This is a delight from beginning to end, like Annie and Liz, smart, funny, and tough. So this sounds really interesting, kind of maybe a little bit of a deeper story than maybe what you would expect from some types of sports stories like this one. So I kind of am curious about this. I've read several Mike Lupica books in the past, and they've been good. They've been really solid books. Again, I'm a big fan of sports fiction stories, and so I'm really excited about checking this one out and seeing how good it is and how interesting it is. And so I don't know if it's the highest Mike Lupica book on my list right now. I've got a couple other ones from him that I think I'm going to prioritize higher. Too Far and The Travel Team are two that I think I'm going to prioritize a little bit higher. So we'll see how that goes, but I'm excited about checking this out at some point. Again, Bump and Run by Mike Lupica. Next up is Face of Betrayal, and this is one that I was really excited about checking out, and I'm really looking forward to how this one is going to play out for me, because it just seems like a really interesting story, and I'm looking forward to checking out how this one goes here. Now I'll take a look and offer you the inside cover here. While home on Christmas break, a 17-year-old Senate page takes her dog out for a walk and never returns. Reporter Cassidy Shaw is the first to break the story, the resulting media firestorm only ensnares federal prosecutor Allison Pierce and FBI agent Nicole Hedges. The three unique women are lifelong friends and call themselves the Triple Threat, a nickname derived from the favorite dessert and their uncanny ability to crack cases via their three positions of power. Though authorities think Katie might have been kidnapped or run away, these theories shatter when Nicole uncovers Katie's blog. They reveal a girl troubled by a mysterious relationship with an older man, possibly a U.S. senator. As the three women race against time to find Katie alive, their increasing emotional involvement brings out their own inner demons and external enemies. There are many faces of betrayal, but they must find the one face in the crowd of growing suspects before they become the next victims. And lastly, we're back to Sandra Brown here. This time it's the Silken Web, and you can see this is kind of a library copy right here. So I got this one for just a couple of bucks at the local library sale. This one is the attraction between Kathleen Haley and Eric Gudjonsson, probably butchered that, was instantaneous, intense, and overwhelming. A beautiful, sophisticated, young fashion buyer, Kathleen was orphaned at 13. Eric, a successful video producer, had Nordic good looks that had always attracted women. Then Kathleen came into his life, and for the first time, his attitude toward relationships and his career changed forever. But there is no pain like the hurt that can follow first love. So you kind of get a little bit about where that's going, and I'm really kind of interested in this one because it just sounded like some interesting characters, and the way that the two characters seem to come together and maybe contrast each other in terms of the walks of life that they come from and their personalities, as such as we were able to figure out at this point. The next paragraph reads, "But there is no pain like that can follow the first love." And soon, Kathleen was packing her bags, telling no one where she was going, and running to San Francisco. As far as Eric knew, she had disappeared from his life, leaving him a bitter and angry man. He didn't know the terrifying despair that gripped her and the loneliness that was tearing her apart as her belief that Eric had used her became an obsession. So it sounds really interesting, and you can see it was withdrawn from the library, and it's a little bit of an older copy of a book, but it sounded like a really interesting story, and so I was glad to pick that up and add that to the collection. And so that's the book haul here that I had, and I'm really excited about some of the books in this haul, and I'm looking forward to checking them out and beginning to read them. I'm gonna hopefully pick up the pace a little bit. I set for me, a fairly ambitious Goodreads goal of 50 books. I'm at 6 right now, I believe. And so looking forward to kicking it in gear. Goodreads says I'm 2 or 3 books ahead of schedule, so that's a good thing. I'm thinking that the 50 books should be very doable by the end of the calendar year. So we'll see. Hopefully by the end of the calendar year, a lot of these books that I just went over in this particular haul will be in my finished folder of books, if you will, by the end of the year. So a lot of these are on my TBR, but looking forward to hopefully cleaning up that TBR, emptying it by the end of the calendar year. Thanks for tuning into this video. If you could, please hit the like button on the video and hit the subscribe button to have yourself right there queued up for future videos on this channel. Looking forward to keeping this thing going and getting everybody excited about reading. And reading is fundamental, they used to always say, and I don't know if that's really true or not, but I know it's a hell of a lot of fun.